Welcome, welcome, welcome to Susie Says. There comes a moment in life, sometimes quiet, sometimes disruptive, when something inside us whispers, there's more. More than the roles we've played, more than the expectations we've met, more than the version of ourselves we carefully constructed. And if we're brave enough, we listen. I'd like to welcome you to The One Who Knows, the space where we explore the inner voice, the steady, wise presence within each of us that already knows the way forward. Today's conversation is for anyone who has ever wondered if it's too late. Too late to change, too late to begin again, too late to trust themselves. Our guest, Krista Bleich, is a trained NLP practitioner and hypnotherapist based in Portage, Wisconsin. She is deeply passionate about personal evolution and the lifelong unfolding of who we are becoming. In her memoir, The One Who Knows, a memoir of starting over in midlife, Krista shares her journey of searching outside herself for fulfillment, only to discover that the very thing she was seeking had been within her all along. In her late 50s, she chose courage over comfort, reflection over judgment, and trust over fear. This is a conversation about reinvention, about releasing self-judgment, about embracing uncertainty, and about learning to trust the knowing that lives within us all. If you're standing at a crossroads, this episode may feel like a hand on your back gently saying, you're ready. Let's do this. Welcome, Krista.
Hey there, Susie. So nice to be here. I am thrilled. That was a lovely intro, and there's a lot there that you said that seems that I have a lot of knowing, but there's a lot of growth that happened in that internal knowing, and trust doesn't just happen overnight. And growth and personal evolution just doesn't happen overnight. And it's been a long journey, a long road, but a good road. And I'm embracing it all. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And
Yeah.
listeners, I met Krista through the NLP training, and we haven't actually met in physical face-to-face, but we have online for a couple of years, and very proud to have you with me. Krista, you write about having an internal knowing from a very young age in your book. Did that knowing feel like as a child?
Well, that internal knowing as a child was not like a spiritual internal knowing, more a knowing that felt like something was off in my life, and I couldn't articulate it. I was a child, but something seemed to me that life should be fuller and richer, and I felt like I was just missing something, and I didn't know what it was. And I don't know that even as a child you can articulate that, because you don't know, you don't have any real life experience yet, yeah, it's just something felt like I was just kind of skating on the surface, but there was something deeper and I was missing it, and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. And so, Krista, at what point did you realize that you were looking outside yourself to feel something within? Because as you said, as a child, you don't know what that is. So what point that sort of, did you come to that realization?
Truthfully, I don't think I came to that realization until I was much, much older, that I was looking for something outside of myself. I was following the crowd, doing what society told me, what education system told me, what my parents told me, my grandparents told me. They knew what they knew, and that's what they thought was the right thing. No judgment or anything on any piece of my life. We are all in this space, having been brought up in our country, our religion, our political system, and all of that shapes us. And I really don't think it was until my later 50s, after I had been really starting to change, that I realized I was following and chasing something that I thought was going to fill me up. And I needed to pay attention to who I really was and what really drove me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Can you share with us a little bit about your upbringing? A little bit.
So the book, The One Who Knows, which is a memoir, does start out in my real early years. I was 7, playing in the backyard with the neighborhood kids, playing getting married. And the one neighbor boy was always the groom, And then me, my sister, and the other neighbor girl were the brides. And one of us was going to be the bride. And I couldn't wait to walk down the aisle and get married to Timmy. And we would live happily ever after. So where do you get this marriage thing back when you're a kid? I don't know. Maybe it was watching Miss USA pageants or The Love Boat or whatever. I don't know if we have those in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, used to love boat,
Yeah, so
but that
I
was the
started
era. That was the era, though, wasn't it?
yes,
That was the time
absolutely.
that, I mean, I remember I was married at 24, my first marriage, and
Mm.
nearly considered on the shelf. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh my God, everyone else
Mm.
is married and I'm not. And I was like, 24. It's, crazy in today's
Yeah, and I didn't
times.
get married till I was 30. So the memoir starts early on in my life, seeking for something outside of myself, going into, late school, high school, feeling like something was off. I liked to knit, I liked to sew, I liked to bake. I didn't like to go to the football games. I felt like more of an outcast, where that's what the thing was that everybody did. I didn't really fit in with the crowd. I know there's a lot of people that are like that, and you try to make yourself fit into the crowd. And there's something that makes it even worse when you're trying, and it's so inauthentic. But at that age, you're just kind of doing what you think you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I love how you talked in the beginning about trust, and a lot of
yeah,
the work I do, it's telling people, it's in small increments, it's baby steps. And so trust is built, it's not just one thing. Trust is
right.
built by small levels of trust over time. So when the big thing comes, it's a no-brainer to trust that
Right.
situation. So I really love that. But I also think it was a time, I mean, every generation does the best they know how. You can't
Right.
go back and, and I love how you acknowledge your parents and grandparents. They only every generation does the best with what they know to evolve us as people
Yes.
and society moving forward. Do you think that everyone has this inner knowing? And does it awaken only through certain experiences?
I absolutely think everybody has some kind of an internal knowing. I also believe that a lot of people don't want to hear it, push it aside on purpose because they don't want to hear what it's telling them. And then there's some people that are just completely oblivious to it. And that's okay
Yeah.
too, because we're all on our own journey and we're all learning about ourselves as when and if we need to.
Yeah, and I think we're more open
Yeah.
about it now as a society. We talk about it,
Yes.
whereas years ago, if you were thinking, that inner wisdom, whatever, you'd be thinking, "Oh, what's wrong with me? Does everyone feel like this?" No one would really talk about it. Whereas now we're just, on such this self-discovery journey that everyone's feeling more confident about exploring that inner wisdom.
I do think so. And I think the more of the people that I hang around with now are the type of people that are self evaluating
Yeah,
and
yeah.
looking for something more for themselves because they realize at this age, well, now I'm kind of jumping into after 55. There's a lot of wisdom that we've gained at this stage in our lives, and life experience and
So
the
yeah,
pains. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so just on that, like midlife can be a really powerful crossroads. So was that what actually catalyzed your decision to start over? I think you're heading there anyway, but
Yeah, no, really it was circumstances that catalyzed me to start over after losing my business, filing for bankruptcy, dissolving my marriage, and my business was everything that I knew. So this book is about discovering who you are, but I didn't own a business as well. So business ownership is a big part of the book, and how I dove headfirst into owning the business and running it and managing it and controlling it and doing everything to make everything be perfect and right for everybody else. So then I would finally feel whole and successful. And all it did was make me more burnt out and more exhausted. All the while I was raising 4 children and in an unhappy marriage. So
Yeah.
back to your question, where did my reinvention, or I can't remember the exact word you said, happen? A series
The,
of things all happened. The catalyst was losing the business, filing for bankruptcy, divorce, all literally within the same 3-month period.
I've got to say, there's one line in the book that really hit to me, and I wanted to read this. I know you want to read something a bit later, but there was
That's
one
fine.
that I think it's the chapter 25, and it's that cold evening in your kitchen as the kids stood by and watched as you said out loud, "It is time to end this all," and you watched your husband walk out the door to the time you signed the dotted line and purchased your very own home. I got really quite emotional reading that. I think I can relate. It was really, very powerful. What did
Yeah,
that
very, and at the time it was such a dichotomy because to to know you don't, and this book is not advocating divorce or anything like that. My story is my story. But
Yeah,
to know that I was not happy in my marriage for many, many, many years, and then to finally have the courage to speak it out loud, because once I knew if I spoke it out loud, the cat was out of the bag and you
and
can
it's
never take
real.
that back. It's real.
It's real.
Yes. So it took me 6 years to finally say it out loud to one friend.
Yeah,
And then there was no going back. And then it was still another 2 years after that when I finally told him to leave. And then there's a many series of events that happened and transpired where there was a tremendous amount of courage and bravery and tears and indecision and needing to make decisions between the kids and the business and then the bankruptcy, to the point where 5 years later, well, actually, it was about 7 years later, I had a really good paying job. I liked what I did. I liked who I had become, and then finally found a house of my own. 7 years is relatively quick, but it's also a long time when you're going through everything. So to finally get to that point where I had a home of my own and the kids were gone, and I had a whole new
so is
life, you know?
is that also how you had to, or didn't have to, but how you authentically, organically redefine success? You had to redefine success like in your
I
late
did have to
50s.
redefine success because I had a successful business and 14 employees. The community loved it. It was a full scratch bakery, coffee house, homemade soup, sandwiches, breakfast, catering. The community really enjoyed. In one part of the dining room, there was a sign that said the gathering room. And I really wanted to create a space where people could come and be. I know that a lot of people always wanted me to put a drive-through in, and I said I would never put a drive-through in because I wanted people to come in, and I wanted them to stand in line to pay for their bakery because it would make you have to talk to somebody.
We're
Sorry,
busy
I'm going off.
serving.
Yeah, so that was it was successful, but it was not necessarily for me because I had created a monster and I had to keep feeding it. And I was
Yeah,
completely exhausted. But then somebody would say, well, why don't you do this? And I would just jump on it. And why don't you add this? Why don't you add more days? Why don't you add Sunday brunch? Why don't you add catering? Sure, let's just do that, because I was caught up in feeling that that was going to finally make me successful and whole and feel
yeah.
more. And it did to some extent, but on the other hand, it drained me. So what's the point?
It was probably living up to that success of your upbringing and what society thought. And whilst I'm sure
Yes.
you enjoyed it, but deep down it wasn't the success that you wanted for yourself, that your inner wisdom was perhaps looking for.
Well, and I
Maybe.
thought that that would just at some point I would finally get there and everything would be okay, and then could relax and just soak into the success. And I never really got there. It was always going to be the next thing,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
it was business or anything else, the next new pair of pants that fit just right. There's always something. Yeah.
Isn't it? I know there is always something. Christy, you described, or you talked about bravery and, in embracing uncertainty. What does bravery look like in everyday life for you now? I mean, you've been through a lot of brave situations.
Now, there's still a lot of times. I don't think you ever get to the point where, a book I read years and years ago, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You don't wait until you have the courage to do the thing. You do the thing and then you build some courage muscle. So it's not like all of a sudden I'm just 1000% brave and I can just do anything. There's a lot of things that still come up that are tenuous or challenging or uncomfortable. But I'm a little bit more apt to just lean into it because I know if I don't, I've had enough experience now that if I don't, I'll regret not having tried because I want to see who I am capable
Yes.
of being. And I won't know that if I don't take that risk.
Yeah.
And when I
absolutely.
do, and it turns out differently or better than I had expected, then that's great. If it turns out like I fell on my face, well, then I learned something from it. So I can learn now from whether it works or it doesn't work.
Yeah. And tell me, were there moments or a time when you almost turned back that you thought, whether it be go back to the bakery business or, you just felt this.
Yeah, I think there was never wanted. Well, first off, when I filed for bankruptcy, I lost everything. My home. Well, was still married at the time, and so I needed to get. It was my business, and part of the divorce proceedings were to have my husband then file for bankruptcy with me. So to not only had I told him I needed to end our marriage, but then like a month later, I needed to tell him that he needed to file for bankruptcy with me because we were still married. If he didn't, he would be carrying the debt of the business as right. So that was like another nail in the coffin. I wasn't getting the business back. And that was a huge financial investment. And there was no way I would have the money to start that over again. So I drove bus. I worked at the grocery store part-time as a checkout clerk. I got a job at a restaurant serving greasy scrambled eggs on Sunday morning to dirty old men. It was like a scummy kind of a little cafe. Anything I could do because I was still raising the kids and I was getting divorced and needed income. So sorry. I forgot the original question and I went off on a tangent. But
That's right. No, it's not. You're not about, was there a time that you felt like turning back?
so I don't think I could turn back. Had or still have 4 kids. I was raising kids. The bakery wasn't an option. So it was like, I have to get up and go drive the bus today. I have to get up
Yeah.
and go to this cafe. I have to get my
Yeah.
kid to football practice. I have to get casserole made for dinner for tonight. It was just doing what I needed to get through to the next day at that point. So yeah, I wasn't giving up. I mean, that was not an option to that was a very difficult time. I think that was the worst because the bakery was very much who I was. That was many years of managing employees, and it really was who I was, and I had a lot of attachment to that business. I started it from nothing and
Yeah.
grew it to what it was. So to lose that, it was kind of like I lost my identity, lost my
Yeah.
marriage. At least I still had my kids. That held me together. As challenging as it is to raise 4 kids with a spouse that's not on the same page as you and mad at you for leaving, that's
Yeah.
very challenging.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
That's
there's
actually
many women that have been through that.
absolutely. But,
Yeah.
I think a lot of things are that it doesn't change this. I know for me in my grief, it doesn't take your pain away, but it's just knowing that you're not alone, that someone else out there
Yeah.
is gone through what you've gone through. And as you said, it's your story. We all have different stories, but sometimes just knowing that someone else actually knows what we're going through is enough to give you that to keep going forward for yourself. So yes, a lot of women have gone through it, but it's nice for them to know that they're not alone. How did the people who sort of came in and out of your life shape your awakening or shape your sort of discovery of
Yeah.
the one who knows?
I think I wouldn't say that I necessarily had a lot of mentors. I think it was more the experiences that I had with people and the community and more quote unquote negative or bad experiences that I saw that I didn't want to ever have to go through that again. That's what
Yeah,
drove me. So there's the negative push and the positive push. And some things in life are the negative that push you into not doing that ever again. And I had a
yeah.
lot more of those. Yeah. Do you remember that when we learned that in NLP, the away from or the towards?
Yes, I was just gonna say, so that's really like distinguishing between your intuition and your fear, isn't it? It's
Yes.
yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. So no,
And that in the fear of not ever going back and the intuitive pull of there was something more. And I'm
yeah,
going to keep following that little bit of a thread to see where it takes me because I know it's leading somewhere and I don't know where yet, but I know it's going to be somewhere.
yeah. I absolutely, absolutely. If you could speak to your younger self, what would you say about your life's detours?
I think I'll just read this little section in this one part of the book to
Right.
that
Yes.
question, which may also be indicative of some other parts of my life. But in the book, there's a reflection section after each chapter where
Yeah,
my
and
my older self or my wiser self is talking to the person at that age, and I'm in the kind of right in the middle of my life here. So as I'll just read this one part of this one reflection. Most of the agony of what you are experiencing now comes from within your own thinking and believing that there should be an easier way, that you are doing something wrong because it is so seemingly hard, that you haven't figured out the secret, that you should be doing something different, or that you are wrong for even having made the choices you have made. Your frustration is within yourself. I get that this may be hard for you to wrap your mind around, but it is melting into the current situation, the giving into it that stops the struggle. So counterintuitive. It is your nature to figure it out, to make it easier, but there is nothing else to do other than just to be in it and all in it. There will come a time when you will be reflecting back at this time, looking at old pictures of yourself now and seeing yourself from your future self. And you will be saying to yourself, I did make it through that time. Just how did it happen? It is the mystery of living life without the insight of what your future self can look back upon. I will let you in on a secret. You will come again upon situations in your life when you will feel that you're just making it through the day. It may not come at this depth, but this is the cycle of living. It's not as though you will finally have it all figured out and life will be smooth sailing from here on out. Embrace the now. Dissolve into it, into all of what you are experiencing without resistance, and there will be a space in your heart that opens for respect for yourself and what life wants to show you and give you in each moment. That is the gift you do not want to miss. This is the privilege of being alive.
yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. I love
So I was
go on.
Go ahead.
No, I
That
was
that
just
was
gonna
my I was still
say,
in the midst of a lot of turmoil. I was not quite out the other side yet, and my future self was already giving me some intuitive guidance that was paying attention to, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, very
Yeah.
powerful, and I do love the reflections at the end of each chapter, and, for those listening, the book has lots of beautiful recipes in it too, so
Oh, yeah,
I love
that's right there.
to that. But
Because
I
the
just
bakery was so popular, I figured I'd throw a couple of recipes in there. So,
no, I think that's a beautiful idea. It's just a beautiful book. Oprah, I read somewhere that she every morning when she wakes up, she puts her feet on the ground and she's grateful for that because so many people can't get themselves out of bed. They can't, that she can
yeah.
walk and these things. So I loved where you said that gratitude of just being alive. And I think that's beautiful. So you've probably touched on this, but you'd be a bit more specific. Like, what did you discover about your capabilities that you hadn't seen before your
Well,
whole?
yeah, parenting really gave me you know that too, just a different insight into yourself that you don't know until you actually are a parent. Business ownership really gave me some confidence that I could start something from nothing and grow it to what I did. Yeah, I think the more of the confidence, even though it was hard, and I guess I didn't really see what it gave me until afterwards. I think that's true with a lot of things too. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know it when you're in it, but when you're afterwards, it's kind of like I am a different person because of those experiences.
This podcast is sponsored by Workbench for the Mind, a mental fitness program created by me, Susie Evans. After navigating my own loss and years of working with people in emotional pain, I created Workbench for the Mind to give people something practical, not pressure. It's a calm, structured space to lay things out, make sense of what you're feeling, and build tools you can use every day. You're not broken. You're learning how to support your mind. Find out more at susieevans.com. Yeah. But do you feel now, or was there a moment when you went, this is right, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be?
I think after everything, and I got to the point where, like you indicated, where at the beginning when I signed the dotted line on buying my own house, that's when I really started to feel like I was not only knowing who I was, but honoring it and trusting it. Where a lot of the other times up until then, I wouldn't honor what I believed was right for myself. Cause there's so much self-judgment. I still like to knit. I like to hike. I like to garden. I have a pretty simple life, but it's really fulfilling and I'm happy with that.
So you are
It's
exactly
not,
where you.
yeah. And it's just interesting to feel as comfortable as I do. And my life is not like so busy. It's full with things that fill me up. And it used to be I hate that when people have that badge of I'm so busy.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?
All
Like
busy, all busy. We all do it.
I
It's a,
value my health.
it's
Go
an
ahead.
excuse.
Sorry.
No, it's
Yes.
an excuse.
I value my health, my relationships, taking care of myself because everything that I've been through, I know logically, I'm 63. I finished the book in my late 50s. So I have less life to live than I already have just by the nature of how long people live. I want to make sure that I live it as full as I possibly can. So doing only what really resonates with me and taking care of my health and doing what I want to instead of feeling like what would other people think, that doesn't matter anymore. I don't know if that's an age thing, Susie, or what, like just like what the fuck, I don't care anymore.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm the same. I'm 62 and I just, I don't know if I want to be 100, but I'm not ready to go yet. And
Yeah.
time's running low. I don't have time for other people's bullshit.
Yeah.
And I waste so much of my time worrying about the people who didn't like me, trying to get them to like me. Whereas now I just focus on the people that do like me and love me, and all the other shit just falls away. So, it's.
And there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like you, or maybe there'll be somebody that doesn't necessarily like the book. And that's okay. There's plenty of different other kinds of books. It's my story. And I think there's pieces in it that just, even if you didn't have a business or you didn't have kids or you didn't go through a divorce, you may be able to see something in your life in that story that is a different circumstance, but the underlying feeling is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
So just on that, finishing off on that, what strengths does midlife bring that younger versions of us may not have. I mean, you touched on trust and confidence, but
Hmm.
then there's a lot of things with confidence.
I think the two of us could both talk to that
Yeah.
question. Wisdom. Yeah. Wisdom. What does wisdom mean to you, Susie? I'm just curious.
I think wisdom, I always used to think it was, like your title of your book is the one who knows. I think it would be like the wise one, someone really intelligent, but wisdom is that inner wisdom to me. It's the
Hmm.
exact what your book's about. It's the inner wisdom to actually trust myself and be confident enough to just be me and not fear
Yeah.
what people think. We all have our own lives to live how we are. And yeah, so I think
Yeah,
that's what,
wisdom I really feel is the biggest gift. Life
yeah.
experiences that brought me to, there's one part in the book where I was in my late teens and I found an ad in the back of a magazine and it said something to the effect of all expenses paid, meals, housing provided for, make all the money you possibly can make. And I signed up, and here I was selling encyclopedias door to door across the country. And I ended up being in a conversion van with 5 other people and driving from military base to military base. And our all expenses paid was a cheesy hotel in the middle of flipping nowhere. And meal was country kitchen, oatmeal or fried eggs or something. And the owner of the company controlled the paychecks and where we drove and where we went. And I was kind of in a bad situation and didn't even realize it, but I couldn't get out of it because he paid for everything and we didn't get a paycheck. And he dictated where the hotels were we were going. That taught me a lot. It was an experience, and I'll never forget that, how scary that was. And ended up going to a payphone and calling my dad collect and saying, this was like 2.5 months in. I got to get out of here somehow. I don't know how I got here, but he got me a plane ticket and I beelined out of there before they realized I was gone. So
Brilliant.
it's a
That's
different
scary.
circumstance, and at the time I was, it was like, something doesn't seem right about this, but it took me 2.5 months to like, I got to get out. I got to get myself out of this. There's no cell
Voice.
phones back then, you know? Um, so different experiences that shaped me, that's given me wisdom now that if, I maybe wouldn't have gone through it, wouldn't have had those life experiences that have taught me more of who I am. So now I'm grateful for them, and
Yeah.
they make for an interesting story.
Well, they do, and you survive and you learn from them, and, people get in situations like that and don't survive, so, or don't come out, so you're
Yeah.
here to tell someone else about that experience. So Krista, tell me, for someone listening who feels stuck but afraid to change, what would you say to them?
Well, there's a difference between being stuck and afraid to change. So, afraid to change, that's really a decision that you make to take one little baby step, if that's all you can take, to try something different or to step out of your comfort zone, even though it feels uncomfortable. Like I
Yeah,
mentioned before about feeling the fear and doing it anyways. And don't wait until because whatever you choose to do, something's going to happen as a result of doing that, which is going to inform you of what would be the next most logical thing to do. And
yeah,
so just keep taking those little steps and then trusting your own internal guidance or your own internal knowing that's telling you, okay, now this would be the next logical thing to do. And logical is kind of an odd term to say, but the next intuitive hit that you get, follow that and know that the next thing will hit you as well. Were you going to say
yeah.
something?
I was just gonna say, so, and
Okay.
you've answered. So how someone begin connecting or reconnecting with their inner knowing, and I think that's it, is actually being aware of it. And when you have that little into it, is to follow it, is to just those small
Yes.
steps and yeah. Yeah.
So I think there was two things: feeling stuck and then having the courage to do something.
Yes.
Is that how you framed it? But if you're feeling stuck, I would reframe the word stuck. Maybe you're
Yeah.
not stuck. Maybe you're in a space where the answer really has not come to you yet. And you need to be in that gap of space of not knowing what to do and being okay with not doing something.
Yep.
And so if you can change the word from being stuck to I'm okay being in this space of, and it might not still be about the courage to do something different. It's I'm not quite sure what yet. And then to be okay with being in that space, in that gap of time when you're not doing something and you're okay with not doing something because you're just not quite sure what. And once it comes to you, then you will take action. And there
Yep.
are some times I think that you have to be in that space because it's not time yet for whatever reason. And to
Yeah.
trust that is also the right place to be.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Mm.
I totally agree with that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice. I keep saying it, but and this woman who wrote this book so many years ago, the Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways, I think. Even with the business that I started, I was frying donuts at Piggly Wiggly at 4 a.m, and I was being managed by some 17-year-old girl that was telling me I was frying the donuts wrong. And I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, I'm sorry. And I like to bake. And I'm like, why am I here at Piggly Wiggly frying donuts? I want to make something, healthy. And I did know how to bake. So
Love that.
I sold 4 loaves of bread the first day I was open, and maybe 5 actually. Yeah. Anyway, it was, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I did the next thing. I got up the next day and made another batch of bread, and let's see who comes today. And then,
Yep.
after I had been open for a number of years and had a brick and mortar location and, was open 7 days a week, and coffee and soup and sandwiches, people would come in. And this is pretty true for anything. That just didn't happen overnight. You just didn't, I didn't buy a building and then all of a sudden put all that stuff there and just I wasn't a franchise that just opened up like that. It took all of the time it took to do each and everything along the way. Yeah.
No, that's great.
So,
And Krista, is there something you'd like to leave, some words you'd like to say to our listeners, or one thing we haven't
mm,
talked about that you'd like to share?
if there's any kind of inclination that you want to try something different for yourself, we get stuck in a lot of ruts real easily. And then nothing changes if nothing changes. And maybe
Yeah,
it's not a giant leap, but it's just one small little thing that you do different today. And maybe another little risk that you take, that you do something different that's outside of your comfort zone that you may have always wanted to do, but were afraid to, and just sign up for that class or go join a group of women that hike. That's what I did. Just every once in a while I get together with them, but it just opened up another little door. Any little thing that you can do to kind of stretch yourself to do something that you're not usual to doing, to create new relationships, new experiences, and you never know where that's going to lead.
exactly
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much for being here today, my guest. And please, listeners, go and get yourself a copy of Krista's book, The One Who Knows, available on Amazon. And you can get it on Kindle as well. We will put the links to your book in the podcast for people to access. Just a beautiful
Thank you.
memoir life, some beautiful recipes and things on there. So just a really, really beautiful read. So thank you again, Krista, for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was lovely. I really appreciate it.
Good. We go.